Washington's still at number 5.
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into another live edition of Locked On Huskies. I'm Roman Tomashoff. That's Lars Hanson. We write for Inside the Huskies of Fan Nation and Sports Illustrated. Thank you for, making whatever watch or listen to the day this is for you. At this point of the day, it's almost 7 p.m. here on the West Coast. Lars, the CFP committee just came out with their most recent rankings, and Washington is still at number 5. Immediate thoughts. What do you got for me?
Yeah, sorry, I'm just giving as much of a crap as the CFP apparently gave this past week because I commend them for their efforts 7 through about 25 or 20 more so, but 25 just to be fair. That was fantastic. I mean, there was a Missouri moved up appropriately. All these great. I'm like, cool. They're actually taking it seriously, man. That was pleasantly appealing. And then you get to Oregon at 6, and it was like, oh, okay, here we go. Not that they had any reason to move up, but you would think like maybe if there's some movement, maybe Oregon moves to 5 and Florida State moves to 6. Like maybe, if we're taking it seriously, that could be a consideration, right?
That's a possibility, sure.
And I mean, again, because they're not finite, right? They could just next week move back up to 4 again. Just like, hey, well, it was a more convincing win. Washington beats a top 20 team. Like, that's why they're moving, but they're all undefeated. And so they all can move around still and all this. And, if Oregon loses again, so I'm like, okay, cool. But once you get to Oregon at 6, and then you see Washington at 5, and then you see Florida State at 4, it's like, okay, you didn't care. Now, I appreciate the small little effort of flipping Georgia and Ohio State, but I've been saying that given I know it's a different roster, but the 2-time defending champs are for a reason until proven otherwise. And Missouri's look great, so they appropriately got moved up. But something about that whole 3, 4, 5 app just does not make sense to me at this point. I mean, unless, and I know they didn't say this, but had they just come out and said, look, until these teams have a loss, this is where we believe they are in terms of just their overall ability on both sides of the ball. Actually make a football argument, right? Say like, hey, we believe Florida has aren't these like football brainiacs or like former football coaches or something?
It's like a bunch of ADs and whoever else. And it doesn't, none of this makes sense.
See, imagine if you had, let's say like all unemployed coach, like Dan Mullins, he's an analyst at ESPN, but like, get a bunch of former coaches who, different eras sort of thing, like, and maybe a couple of ADs or maybe like a president or whatever, like, whatever you want to say, preferably 80s than presidents, but just get, some other voices, but have maybe more of a football mindset if we're really being honest about this, because no offense to Troy Dannon, but if I'm saying, would I rather have the, Jeff Tedford, Kalen DeBoer, or, Jen Cohen, Troy Dannon speaking to me and choosing between which team should be better, I would rather take the coaches. Like, that's just me personally. You don't want active coaches, right? You don't want like Dan Lanning, Kalen DeBoer, Lincoln Riley, all having a say in who should be.
That's what the coaches polls for, yeah.
Right. That right, exactly. Which is fine. That's a 1/3 of the weighted measurement, right? Of what it used to be in the BCS and all those other metrics and whatnot. But I think we're seeing the fact that it's ADs and people that aren't necessarily in the game or have been in the game making these decisions, because it doesn't make any sense.
I've got a lot of thoughts here, and I did a little bit of ranting to you right before the show started, but I need to start with this. Boo Corrigan, the college football playoff chair committee, couldn't have been more clear when he said when he basically said he didn't watch Washington play, because he gave all kinds of props to Florida State. All kinds of props. And I'm not going to knock Florida State at all, because they don't deserve it. They're undefeated. They're a really good team. I really like what they have going, especially on offense there. But it was so insanely obvious. And this is coming from just the standpoint of two guys who, we watch all the games, and we're Washington people. We're media with the team. We cover the team. We're around them every single day. But this goes beyond that at this point, because Boo Corrigan said, and I'm basically quoting him here. I don't have the full direct quote in front of me, but he said, Yeah, Florida State's got a really good offense and a really good defense. And, they deserve a lot of credit for that win over Miami because that rivalry is really tough. Oh, and Washington had a good defensive second half. What does that mean? Like, truly, what does that mean? That doesn't mean anything. All you're saying with that is that you didn't watch them play. Like, that's all this is. Is Washington's defense great? No. But does that matter in the grand scheme of things when they have the most ranked wins on anybody on just really when you look up and down the roster of just who should be considered for this? Because they have the Arizona win. They have the USC win because they were ranked at the time. They have the Utah win, even though they're following the rankings, and they beat Oregon. That's more than almost anybody else can say at this point. I'm not going to knock Georgia. I'm not going to knock Ohio State, Michigan, or Florida State. I'm not going to knock what they're doing. But if you think, because the last thing that he said was they're making it a tougher conversation every week. So you're saying it wasn't one before? That's ridiculous. That's insanity. That doesn't make any sense. And we have a lot of thoughts here that I know we're going to continue to share. But first, we're going to get to an ad read real fast before I lose my absolute mind over just this just blatant miscarriage here. And we're going to talk about our friends over at Jace Medical because we spent a lot of time talking together, you and I. We get fired up together on wins and losses, just like right now, and who starts and who sits. And I'm thankful for that connection that we have. And today, I want our chat to be a little bit more personal. I learned that you can get a 1-year supply of any medication just really that you need. You realize what that means? You can bring on extended travel, bring on the next natural disaster or supply chain issue. You are covered, my friend. You don't have to worry about whether or not you can refill your prescriptions. And this is possible because of our friends at Jace Medical. You can go online right now at Jace Medical to receive your 12-month supply on your daily medication. Remember to use promo code LOCKEDON at checkout for a discount as well. A verified customer had this to say about Jace. I am thankful for the service. Supply chain issues caused me to cut pills in half in order to have it. I ordered most of my daily meds with a year's supply. I also ordered the antibiotic kit. I feel secure now. Prices are lower than local pharmacies, and I highly recommend this for everyone. If you or someone you know would love to get some peace of mind by having your supply of any daily med, go to jacemedical.com to see if it's offered for you. Remember to use promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off your purchase. All right, that was a lot of words coming out of my mouth. Lars, whatever you got for me here, my friend.
Well, see, here's the interesting thing about that, because if you're going to say, oh, we really like Florida State's offense, first of all, Miami barely they have a winning record or they don't. Either they're 4-5 or 5-4. I know they're my point is, it's not like you're beating Brian. Before I get to that point, actually, let me address the elephant in the room. You're saying Washington had a good second half. You didn't finish the end of the sentence. Not saying you didn't. I'm saying
no, the committee didn't. No, you're right.
The committee, the Book Organ is missing a part of that sentence. Had a good second half and beat a top 25 team, top 20 team in the country, top 20 team in the CFP according to your rankings. So it's like, okay, if you're going to take 1 through 20 seriously, but then when it doesn't, it's we're not sponsored by them. We use them. PFF fits your narrative just like the CFP fits its narrative for its rankings. I swear. Right. Like it's right. There's no other way to splice it to where, okay, why did you flip 1 and 2? But not 4 and 5,
right?
Just for a week.
It's not hard
for a week, and sure. Also, and then also if you think about it, if Washington, and by the way, the other point is you also had Oregon State at 11 instead of 10, so that's almost an extra, like a backhand. Like here's the forehand with the 5, and we got one more on the backhand with the 11.
Right, and I mean I kind of get like putting Louisville over them with the 1 loss. Like I understand that. And that's kind of setting up a little bit more of a better ACC championship game. That one I don't have as much of an issue. You're not wrong. I'm not knocking your point by saying that. But the thing that's really frustrating to me, and we've got some really great comments here. I want to address this one though from Jerry Gelder. It doesn't matter. Win Pac-12 even with 1 loss in there in the playoffs. This week doesn't matter. You're right. This week's playoff rankings don't matter, especially because Michigan and Ohio State have to play each other. So there's still a very viable path into the top 4 for this team. But it's still really frustrating to see that they're like, this is almost just saying that the committee is not taking them seriously. Like that's all this is. And setting up, and we've said this before on these reaction shows, setting up a matchup between Michigan and Ohio State to be like 2 and 3, 1 and 2, whatever it is, that's great. That's fine. But with the precedent that they've set just to this point, I don't even know if a big win over Oregon State, or it's just not a big win, just a regular win. Let's say they win by 7 or they win by 10. If Washington beats Oregon State by 10, I don't know if that's even going to do it at this point. Is that an overreaction for me? Probably. Yeah. But I don't care.
See, actually, the problem is it's not an overreaction, and I actually disagree with that comment. Not your comment, but and no offense to whoever made the comment, but Washington as a one-loss Pac-12 champion, I don't be surprised if they get left out. Because I'm not for that, to be very clear. I'm not saying, and I'm not proud of that, but I mean, if they're getting backhanded now when they're all undefeated, if Florida State's undefeated and Washington is a one loss, well, there's also your difference right there. But if let's say Florida State loses, I guarantee you they're going to put a one-loss Florida State over a one-loss Washington. And who knows, they could actually even jump Oregon. So that's where my thing comes into play, where it's like, okay, it almost senses like with Oregon at 6, they could easily jump into 4 or even 3, right? If the committee says, hey, that was a big time win over a top 5 Washington team. Like that would just be the ultimate like backhanded. Yeah. Now again, but to this point, Washington can prevent all of that by being an undefeated Pac-12 champion.
All Washington has to do is win. That's all they have to do. And that's kind of been our point with these rankings, where you don't want to let them frustrate you. But there's a certain point where watching football on the West Coast, and this being what we know and this being what we cover, it's like, well, where's the consistency here? Because Georgia had a dominant win over Missouri. Over Ole Miss. That's fine. Moving them up to 1 is fine. It is fair. But there was a defense of leaving Ohio State at number 1 last week after they beat Rutgers. And there was no movement from Washington after beating a ranked USC team. This week, there was barely a mention, and it was an abbreviated show where they only got a couple of minutes with Buch Oregon, but it was just barely a mention of Washington. It was a throw-in of, oh yeah, they're undefeated, and oh, they're making it more of a conversation. No, that's not the point. The point is they should have been in the conversation just even more from all this. And the Ohio State Michigan thing is one of the biggest things here. But I know we have a lot more to get to, but we gotta make that sponsorship money real quick, and we're gonna come right back to this. First, we're gonna send a message to our good friends over at LinkedIn, because these days every new potential hire can feel like a high stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs help find the right people for your team faster and for free. And I mean, good news for Husky fans out there. Looks like the CFP committee will be getting a new chair next year. So hey, maybe they use LinkedIn Jobs to help with that search. All you have to do is add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience, so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. That's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs number 1, delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockdowncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockdowncollege. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, moving right along here, because the Ohio State Michigan factor is probably the biggest thing in all this, right? Because one of those teams will lose. We talked about it a lot on our Wednesday show. Everybody's got to make sure they tune into that too. But that's something where that's a fact that should be a factor in all this. But you can't even count out like the fact that the committee might just want to put one of those teams in there, and that's with excluding right now a one-loss Texas team, a one-loss Alabama team, and yeah, they'll have to play Georgia at some point. But there's still so much to consider here, where it's dicey for Washington in the fact that if there's one minor stumble, even against a really good team like an Oregon State or a potential Pac-12 championship game against Oregon, that there's still a way that they're left out of this conversation, which more than anything is just unfair to the kids on this team.
Yeah, I mean, it's a true mental test. I mean, for the team, because again, first of all, it's not necessarily, but that's nothing new, right? Because especially once you get to the month of October undefeated, then you get to the month of November undefeated. It's like, okay, well, clearly you're mentally capable no matter what. I mean, you won a game without scoring an offensive touchdown. That I think in of it. So it's Right. It's like, wow, like, you know what? Washington proved that even with no offense, they can still win a game. Right. And it's like, granted, it's against a 2-17, but it's like, it doesn't, like, what happens if, you know, you put all the other schools in the top 5 in that same situation? Does Florida State win? I don't know. Washington did. And yes, it was at home, but again, you did what you have to do. And
right.
It's unfortunate, but it's building the perfect narrative for Washington to where it's us versus us. We've been disrespected our entire season, even though we were undefeated, and we literally had to go all the way to the final test, and we never lost. That, I think, is how Washington. That's the ideal ending for this scenario, right? Where Washington goes in as an undefeated Pac-12 champion, wins their semifinal game, and hopefully in the Rose Bowl, and you win a national championship. It makes it that much sweeter because nobody can deny you if you take the power away from them. For the time being, they don't have that power because these rankings truly don't mean anything until we get to championship weekend, right? I mean,
absolutely. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, that was it.
Yeah, it's just that, right? The rankings don't mean anything until December 3rd, and that's what we should focus on here. But all we can look at and all we can talk about is what's in front of us right now. And right now, what we see is a Washington team that is on the outside looking in through, correct me if I'm wrong here, but through no fault of their own. Like, have they struggled at times? Yeah, absolutely. But every team struggles at times, and it's about how you overcome that. And they've done that very well up to this point. They have as strong of a resume as anybody in the country, but for whatever reason, truly, they're on the outside looking in, and that's frustrating to see.
You know what I will say? Watch this. This will tie into later on in the week. Washington, this would be, if they beat Oregon State, that's 3 consecutive top 25 victories, right? USC, Utah, and Oregon State, right?
That's correct.
But they were all 3 consecutive, right? I'm not missing a game in between, right?
No, you're not.
I don't believe Florida State has played 3 ranked teams in a row on their resume. If Florida State loses
teams,
right, exactly. So if Florida State loses and Washington adds that 3rd, they will move up to 3rd.
Oh, okay.
And I think that will be the playoffs because then the committee's you're forcing their hand, right? You're in Florida State's helping you with that cause, but I don't know. I've never truly bought Florida State. I thought that, again, in a down. I mean, look at how bad Clemson is this year. Look at how bad Miami is. Not that great. It's look at the ACC and look at the Pac-12, and you ask with a straight face, tell me the ACC is a better conference.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I feel like that's a great place to end this. Thank you to everybody for tuning into this somewhat abbreviated live show with just a lot of raw reactions. We really appreciate it. The comment section has been awesome. Again, thank you so much for tuning in. If this is your first time here, please feel free to subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. We are there. We are everywhere. Again, please make sure you subscribe, like this video, leave a comment down below. We do want to hear all your thoughts. We try to reply to as many of them as we possibly can. And again, if you like the video, leave a 5-star review on audio. Please make sure to subscribe, and we will talk to you on Wednesday.